cybersecurity incidents have costly economic consequences, especially when it comes to big businesses. Like, say, for example, T-Mobile is like one of the U.S. Telecom, and I actually worked for there for quite a bit, and um, I know for a fact there was a cyber attack that cost a lot of money, because you have to, compensate and whatnot. A lot of things could happen with a simple security breach. And without trust in digital interactions, people and organizations may be reluctant to adopt new technologies that, they're not comfortable with. And cybersecurity benefits individuals, organizations, and governments by safeguarding digital assets and privacy, like mentioned earlier. But challenges like cybersecurity gaps need attention from all stakeholders, even users. So even if it's a big company, even specific users, they need to be aware for cybersecurity, practices. And a secure digital environment with privacy, inclusivity, and equal protection is a key goal for digital connectivity. Now let's proceed, to the ethical considerations. Because using cybersecurity technologies and practices raises several ethical concerns, particularly in the areas of privacy, security, and fairness. Now let's explore each of these concerns. So first would be the privacy, which, since cybersecurity often involves data collection and monitoring to detect new threats. However, this raises ethical questions about surveillance and privacy. Security measures require the secure handling of personal data, and anonymity and pseudonymity online may be undermined, which is impacting to freedom of expression and whistleblower. Aside from that, we also have security, which dual use of technology can cause ethical dilemmas when defensive technologies are misused for offensive cyber activities. Responsible disclosure of discovered vulnerabilities can be tricky too, as prompt disclosure allows for timely patching, but delayed or non disclosure can put users at risk. So, there's never a right answer when it comes to, you know, every situation. There's really gonna be, some dilemmas, whatnot. That's why there's really a lot of ethical consideration when it comes to cybersecurity. Now let's proceed with fairness, which is cybersecurity algorithms can be biased if they are trained on historical data containing biases. So let's say, for example, you downloaded an app, although you know it doesn't have any virus or any malicious intent, but if there's like one component that was linked to a previous threat, you know that could terminate that file. So that's just one of the examples that could happen. Like mentioned with AI earlier, it really depends on the training data and historical data. So there's still that small percentage of unreliability rather. So additionally, certain cybersecurity measures can disproportionately impact vulnerable groups, highlighting the need for inclusive cybersecurity solutions. So let's go ahead and proceed to the professional practice. So, assessing cybersecurity using the ACM Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct provides a framework to identify potential issues and conflicts with ethical compliance. The ACM Code of Ethics highlights four ethical principles, which is first, general moral imperatives, moral more specific professional responsibilities. The third one would be organizational leadership imperatives and compliance with the code. So let's examine how these principles apply to cybersecurity. So first is the general moral imperatives. What it entails is that ensuring that cybersecurity practices prioritize the protection of individual privacy and confidentiality of data. That's one. Second would be avoiding harm by implementing robust security measures to prevent data breaches and cyber attacks that could harm individuals, organization, or society at large. That's the worst case scenario. Like mentioned on the incident on T-Mobile, that was big because that affected social security numbers and whatnot. A lot of things could happen. You could mess up your credit score, everything. So yeah. Let's get back. I'm sorry for that. I'm out of the that distraction. So let's go ahead and proceed with the next principle, which is more specific professional responsibilities, which is honor and respecting intellectual property rights when developing or using cybersecurity tools and technologies. That's one. And other aside from that is being honest and forthright about capabilities and limitations of cybersecurity measures to maintain professional integrity. We need to be transparent about that. We can't just promise one thing or just lie about one thing or the limitations of one thing. Transparency will push push safety for the cyberspace. Now, moving back, the last one would be continuously improving cybersecurity skills. Like I mentioned earlier, it's an everyday or basically a growing process. It doesn't stop anywhere. It's going through the flow. Now, and knowledge to provide the most effective and up-to-date protection. Because although you were able to resolve one thing from the past, that there's still that chance that you need to make sure everything's covered because not only cybersecurity is growing but also cyber threats. So moving on would be organizational leadership imperatives. So, firstly, advocating for the adoption of ethical cybersecurity practices within organization and promoting a culture of security awareness. Based on my experience, jobs have that type of seminar, like maybe monthly regarding a new cybersecurity option. They also provide like exams for that and whatnot. So this culture, gives out that healthy environment to keep data secure. And aside from that, addressing any conflicts of interest that could compromise the integrity of cybersecurity decisions. Now, lastly, is the compliance with code. It's basically ensuring the cybersecurity profession adhere to the ACM code of ethics in all aspects of their work. So there's no exceptions. Now, the ASEAN Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct provides a robust ethical framework for computing professionals. There are potential issues and conflicts that may arise in its compliance, especially in the context of cybersecurity. Some of these concerns include: first is finding the right balance between security and privacy is a challenge for cybersecurity professional as strict security measures can infringe on users' privacy, creating ethical dilemmas, like I mentioned earlier. And other thing is cybersecurity professionals may use offensive tactics to counter threats, but this can raise ethical concerns due to potential harm or rights violations. The third one would be responsible vulnerability disclosure, which requires a careful ethical judgment to balance the need to inform users and vendors while avoiding premature exposure and exploitation. What that means is basically if we are too transparent when it comes to the cybersecurity rather, this could be a lead for cyber threats. So yeah, it's a good balance. We need to maintain that good balance, especially for cybersecurity professionals. Now, the fourth one, which was mentioned earlier, is that AI-based cybersecurity technologies can inherit biases from training data, leading to unfair or discriminatory outcomes. Addressing biases and ensuring fairness is a key ethical consideration. Now, aside from that, there's also dual use of technology, like mentioned earlier. And aside from that, challenges exist in ensuring equal access to cybersecurity resources and protections for all, especially vulnerable and underserved communities with limited access to protective measures, like mentioned earlier, and that analogy when it comes to VPN services for students. So, last The last possible issue and conflict would be cybersecurity professionals must balance ethical obligations with organizational demands, which can be challenging when priorities clash. Because at some point, cybersecurity professionals in specific, could lose their job when they over prioritize ethical obligations and fail to hit the quotas for, uh, you know, what the organization demands. So it's really a case to case basis, and that could really happen. And yeah, so let's proceed. Furthermore, computing professionals play a crucial role in developing, implementing, and administering cybersecurity to protect digital assets, privacy, and user safety. Some of their key responsibility in each phase are as follows. So first is developing cybersecurity. Computing professionals must assess cybersecurity risk and design secure system with encryption, access control, and authentication. Securing secure coding practices with input, validation, and error handling are essential to prevent common vulnerabilities. Privacy considerations should be integrated into the development process, minimizing data collection and retaining only necessary information. Now let's proceed with the next key responsibility, which is implementing cybersecurity. So, computing professionals are responsible for setting up security measures such as firewalls, intrusion detection system, antivirus software, and the likes. They also must administer access controls to restrict data access and respond swiftly to security incidents. Routine patching and updates are essential to address known vulnerabilities and prevent exploitation. That's why there's a lot of software updates that keeps on happening when it comes to antivirus and whatnot, because there never will be an end to new threats. So, moving on, ACM Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct outlines the importance of security audits, training, policy development, vendor management, and ethical decision making to ensure user privacy and the protection of individuals and organizations. Computing professionals must prioritize privacy, security, and integrity in all cybersecurity activities. So let's move on to regulatory considerations. In the realm of cybersecurity, various laws, regulations, and guidelines have been established to address the growing challenges of protecting digital assets and data. Some of the prominent examples would be EU's GDPR, which imposes strict requirements on organization to ensure the privacy and security of EU citizens' data. CCPA, which grants California residents control over their personal data and requires businesses to disclose data practices and provide opt-out mechanisms. Funny enough, this is actually one of the things I've encountered when in working on, T-Mobile rather. They do have options, and I have seen options for California citizens to opt out on providing some information. And also, HIPAA, which sets standards to protect patient data and ensure privacy, safeguarding EPHI in the healthcare industry. And lastly, payment card industry data security standard, which is very long, which applies to organizations that handle credit card transactions and mandate security measures to protect cardholder data, especially since cardholder institutions hold very important identity documentation like your social security number, your TIN number, or whatnot. Now, let's proceed with the regulatory gaps. Um, because despite significant efforts in establishing cybersecurity laws and guidelines, several regulatory gaps persist, which could be addressed to enhance cybersecurity protections. So these gaps would be first, global harmonization. The absence of consistent global cybersecurity standards can lead to challenges in cross border data protection and cooperation between nations in combating cyber threats. Second would be emerging technologies. Rapidly evolving technologies such as artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things require updated and specific cybersecurity regulation to address their unique risks. Now, aside from that, third one would be supply chain security. Strengthening regulations around supply chain security is essential to address vulnerabilities originating from third party providers. Now, another one would be small and medium enterprises or SMEs. Many regulations primarily target large organizations, leaving SMEs with limited guidance on cybersecurity best practices. Addressing the needs of smaller businesses is crucial as they are also vulnerable to cyber threats. Like mentioned earlier, all are vulnerable for cyber threats and is why all users can take advantage of cybersecurity or rather cybersecurity is essential for everyone. Now, some of the other examples once again is first incident reporting and information sharing. Encouraging comprehensive incident reporting and facilitating information sharing between public and private sectors can enhance collective cyber defense and incident response. And aside from that, government surveillance, balancing national security interests with privacy concerns in the context of government surveillance remains a complex issue that requires ongoing dialogue and regulation. And moving on is global cooperation and enforcement. Enhancing the international cooperation and enforcement mechanism is vital in addressing cyber threats that transcend national boundaries. So basically, furthermore, to bridge these regulatory gaps, it is essential for governments, international organizations, and industry stakeholders to collaborate in developing comprehensive and adaptable cybersecurity regulations that could effectively safeguard digital environments while respecting individual privacy and rights. So since everything's covered, let's proceed with the recommendation I was able to come up with. Um, Addressing social and ethical impacts of cybersecurity requires a collaborative effort from IT professionals, organization, and policymakers. Therefore, here are some recommendations for each stakeholder. So let's start with IT professionals. IT professionals should stay up to date with cybersecurity threats, tech, and ethical consideration through continuous education, training to make ethical decisions, and security. They'll need to ensure privacy by design first. So privacy by design basically, it's to integrate privacy consideration from the outset of system development to provide users privacy rights and data protection. The others would be responsible vulnerability disclosure, which is to follow ethical practices in disclosing vulnerabilities, ensuring timely and responsible communication to affected parties. And lastly, it's for ethical offensive tactics. If involved in offensive cybersecurity activities, ensure compliance with the ethical standards mentioned earlier and avoid causing undue harm or violating others' rights. So it's a good balance of utilizing the cybersecurity tools. Now let's proceed with the recommendations for organization, which is first the strong ethical culture. This was mentioned earlier. To foster a strong ethical culture within the organization, emphasizing the importance of responsible data handling and ethical cybersecurity practices. Aside from that is privacy impact assessment, and what it entails is before implementing new projects and technologies, conduct assessments to identify and address potential social and ethical risks related to privacy. Aside from that, transparent data practices, because being transparent about data collection usage and sharing practices with consumers or customers, employees, and other stakeholders. Like I mentioned earlier, transparency um, for everyone leads to a healthy cyberspace. Now, that's in specific for cybersecurity. Now, lastly, for organizations, we it would be best for them to encourage ethical reporting, wherein they create channels for employees and users to report potential ethical concerns related to cybersecurity without fear of retaliation. Now, let's proceed with the recommendations for peacemakers. Firstly, it would be comprehensive cybersecurity legislation, which is to develop and implement comprehensive cybersecurity laws and regulation that consider both technical aspect and ethical implication. These regulations should address data protection, privacy, and accountability. Let's proceed with international collaboration, like mentioned earlier, to foster international cooperation to establish, harmonize cybersecurity standards and regulations to address cross border cyber threats effectively. Aside from that, there's also ethical AI and automation. Create guidelines and policies that address the ethical implication of using AI and automation in cybersecurity operation, ensuring fairness, transparency, and accountability. And aside from that, there's also the support for SMEs, provide resources and support and to help small and medium enterprises and adopt ethical cybersecurity practice, as they may lack the same level of expertise and especially resources as larger organizations. Let's proceed with public awareness. To invest in public awareness campaigns to educate the general population about cybersecurity risk, online privacy, and the importance of ethical behavior. One thing to side note, I actually did a study last semester regarding cybersecurity literacy for college students. That was basically 100 randomly selected students answer and you know to test out their literacy when it comes to cybersecurity threats. It's good that 73% are literate when it comes to cybersecurity threats. But since there's still a percentage, things like public awareness, which I and most of the students mentioned as well, learned about, really help push our literacy rather when it comes to cybersecurity. And moving on, is inclusivity and diversity. To encourage inclusivity and diversity in the cybersecurity workforce, as diverse perspectives can contribute to more ethical decision making. Now, so basically that prioritize collaboration, and, and collaboration is a big thing with when it comes to cybersecurity, because without collaboration, we won't have a foolproof cybersecurity or growing cybersecurity practices. So let's proceed. So yeah, sum everything up. By implementing these recommendations, IT professionals, organization, and peacemakers, or other policymakers, sum it all up. By implementing this recommendation to IT professionals, organizations, and policymakers can collectively work towards a more socially responsible and ethically sound approach to cybersecurity, ensuring that technology is used in a manner that protects individuals' rights and promotes the well-being of a society as a whole. And that concludes this presentation. For further information and cybersecurity, in-depth cybersecurity, or rather about cybersecurity, please do proceed and check out the paper. So that will be all. Thank you for listening.